everybody, welcome back to the next part in my FAQ series. This is episode 2 of this new series that I started, just basically answering frequently asked questions that I get, whether it be through email, my YouTube channel, Facebook page, what have you. The first episode I discussed about how I go about learning difficult pieces of music. After a lot of people, I'd get lots of questions asking how I go about approaching that. And actually, when I was doing that, I did the video premiere for that, and I had a lot of people in the chat, and a lot of folks were asking me about sweep picking. And that's a question that I've had a lot in the past, is how to either learn how to sweep pick or improve at whatever level of ability we have for sweep picking at the moment. So that's an interesting question. I gave it some thought, and it's something that I've taught to many students over the years. A little disclaimer, I don't consider myself to be a sweeper in the sort of traditional shredder sense, where you see some amazing players who can just rip up the guitar fretboard with these crazy sweeps and stuff. I mean, I've practiced it. It's just not something that I like to do it maybe so overtly. I like to use it maybe in a more subtle way. But having said that, I can still show you the techniques that I use to do that. So let's dive right in and start talking about how we can approach this. Like everything, when you hear me talking about learning anything, like I did in the first video when I was talking about learning a difficult piece of music, it's all about slowing down and breaking things down into manageable pieces, right? Well, in this case, we're going to not only break down the notes into manageable pieces, the notes that we want to play, but also the different elements that we need to successfully sweep pick. Now, you might be surprised. I think what happens is so many folks, when they think sweep picking, well, obviously they think, what does this pick have to do? And they automatically go to this hand, they think, what do I have to do here to get this sweep going? I'm going to say that our left hand is equally, if not more important. Maybe not, I don't want to say more important, but equally important to what's happening with the sweeping hand, or our right hand, okay? And when I get to these different elements, I think you'll see why I say that. But let's start with the picking hand, okay? So what is sweep picking? Well, sweep picking is basically doing a rapid succession of notes, for the most part, one note per string, kind of playing one note. Let's say if we start on the 5th string, the next note will be on the 4th string, then the 3rd string, then the 2nd string, then the 1st string. So what happens is when we play these quickly, the hand has the look of sweeping, like a broom would sweep across the floor, right? All one movement, all one direction of the pick hitting the strings, one note per string, okay? So an example of a sweep. If you watch my right hand, right, it's just doing a bunch of downstrokes, and it seems like it's just doing a bunch of downstrokes and a bunch of upstrokes. So a lot of people sort of think, well, how do we do this to get it to sound smooth and fluid? Well, it's really not like, strumming a chord, let's say, right? Where we're making a sort of hitting all the strings in one motion. There almost has to be a separation between our pick strokes here. So it's not like a strum, we don't want to think of it as a strum, right? Even though we may be moving quite quickly, right, through the strings. But there has to almost be a broken quality to it. So there's a term that you'll hear a lot with pick strokes. Classical guitar players use it a lot, called rest stroke. And a rest stroke, in classical music, is when we pick the strings and our finger, obviously finger picking, and our finger rests on the next string in whatever direction it's picking. In this case, I'm going up, and it's resting, from the 2nd to the 3rd string. So that's a rest stroke. So it's almost like we want to do a quick succession of rest strokes that have a certain level of choppiness to it, but still at the speed we're going to do it, it's going to have a smooth quality, a fluid quality, if that kind of makes sense. It almost seems contradictory. But if you watch my pick here, I hope you guys can all see it here. We'd want to almost practice angling this pick to the ceiling on our downstrokes, and then angling it pointing to the floor on our way back. So it's going to be this kind of, change in the wrist movement. I'm exaggerating the movements, but change in the direction that my wrist is moving. But to start off with, to gain some control, I would just mute the strings with this hand, and what I would do is practice getting these rest strokes. So playing just the 6th string, and then letting our pick stop for just an instant on the 5th string. Then when that feels comfortable, let's do it so we hit the 6th and 5th strings and stop on the 4th. And then we'll keep adding a string. Now we'll stop on the 3rd. So we're gaining the control in this hand to learn where to stop that hand. Now we'll stop on the 2nd. And then we'll go all the way 6th. And we can do that in both directions. 1 string, rest stroke. Very annoying to listen to, but it sort of gets you the feel without having to worry about this hand and coordinating the hands and thinking about notes and whatnot. It just gets you used to this kind of sweeping motion that we're going to have to do with this hand. And the reason I like to separate it into those individual kind of rest strokes controlling where we stop is it helps us to gain control and accuracy with our right hand, okay? So that's essentially the kind of thing we're going to do with this hand. But now, this is why I was saying the left hand is going to be, I would say in some ways more important, and I don't want to just come right out and say that because a lot of people say, oh, you know, it's not as important or it's not more important. But the reason is I think what I see a lot of people doing in all the years teaching, I noticed a lot of people would think, because a lot of times when we're sweep picking, we're playing arpeggios, which are the notes of a chord played one at a time, they would think, well, I'm going to play an arpeggio, so I'm going to play it like a chord. I'm just going to hold the chord down like I would, you know, if I was playing the chord, and then I'll sweep through the notes. Now, there's a problem with that. All the notes are going to be ringing together, okay? We don't want that. There has to be that certain choppiness with sweep picking. Where the notes are individual and separate, okay, from each other. So one thing, I'm going to use this little arpeggio, which is an A minor arpeggio that I was playing a little bit earlier. Now, this video is not about learning arpeggios. There's a lot of good information about learning arpeggio shapes. You can just Google that. I may do a video, because it's a question I've had a lot, is how I use arpeggios. I may do another FAQ about that in the coming weeks. But this little pattern here is just, I'm using my pinky on the 12th fret on the 5th string, 2nd finger on the 10th fret on the 4th string on the C, the E on the 9th fret on the 3rd string, the 10th fret A on the 2nd string, and then the high C up here, 1st string, 8th fret, and then I finish off with my pinky at the E on the 12th fret on the high E string. Do you notice this hand as I play that? It never stops moving. Now that may go against what a lot of people feel is what we would want to do if we were trying to play quickly, because it's not very efficient. There's a lot of motion going on, but we have time for that motion. You see, by the time I finish with my pinky here, I want to get rid of that note, and I want to play the next note. I'm done with this pinky note, this A on the 12th fret. By the time I'm here, I'm done with this, so it's nothing for me to just roll those off with the sweep. Okay, and then just get out of the way, and it gives it that chompiness to it. Now I'm rolling all the way up to my middle finger. Okay, so it's all about keeping this moving, but that poses another problem now, because when I play this note and let go of it, I'm running the risk of that note ringing out and it being sloppy. Well, the other thing about this hand here, my right hand, my picking hand, is that I always let it drag down and mute the strings that it's just played. And that's why you're not hearing those notes ring out. So it's a matter of having it ready here, out of the way of the note, and then as I go to the next note, the heel of my palm here is rolling down. I may even palm mute that first note. Doesn't sound bad that way. It sounds pretty good. Okay, so that's very important. Then you say, well, on the way back up, how am I doing it? Well, this hand, if you notice, I'm almost creating a bar, but not pressing on the note. So as I come back, I'm using the tip of this finger to touch my second string so I don't get an accidental note there. I've released the pressure on the first finger, and then I'm using the second finger to touch the high E string here. And then if you notice, this rolls over to bar and mute the strings below it. And that's why you're hearing, I might have been a little bit sloppy there, but excuse me. That's why you're not hearing all these notes ring out. So muting with this hand on our upwards or descending sweep picking, so that we're using the tips of our fingers and the light bars where we're not pressing to just mute out the strings that we don't want to be ringing out, right? So far, does that help? Now, I hope it does. The other thing is, I'm doing kind of a long, sequence here. One of the things I think a lot of people make a mistake is they see people do these really big kind of arpeggios, right? And they want to jump right into playing these sort of longer sweeping patterns. One thing I would suggest is taking portions of these, kind of like what I was doing here. Or even going to the top portion, the top 3 strings. So we'd start with maybe our index finger on the 9th fret, move to the 10th fret with our 2nd finger, and then 8th fret on the high E string with our 1st finger. And then to our pinky to the 12th. We can just practice the downward movement of that a whole bunch of times till we feel comfortable with combining the elements we've already talked about. Now, to change directions, this is interesting. We go with a downstroke, and if you notice, I'm doing like the little rest stroke, right? Notice how I just let my pick fall through like I told you in the beginning. Now, when I get to this 12th fret note, what I'm going to do to change directions, I'm going to pick my upstroke. If you notice, my wrist rotates. Now, I've done my rest stroke. I'm ready to go on this note, but I'm going to do a pull-off here, so that I don't have to change the direction of my pick again and mess up my sweeping motion. So it's going to be pull off, and that allows me to continue my sweep going downwards. Okay, so that keeps me going. Now, there's always going to be a place where we have to change direction. So if you notice here, on this 3-note sweep, upstroke, pull off, up, up. Now, I kind of want to avoid hitting this note again if I can, but it's tough sometimes. So, at the speed we're going, I'm probably brushing it, but I'm trying to accentuate getting my downstroke back again here. So. And once you're getting to that speed anyways, little mutes or imperfections almost kind of blend into the sound of it, if that kind of makes sense. Not that we want to try to play sloppy or anything, but there are little issues with where we're going to have to cross over strings and whatnot, right? The other issue too is always be aware of what timing you're playing, right? A lot of people just kind of jump into this and it doesn't have any basis to musical note values or groupings, right? And that's going to sound really off. It's going to be hard to use those in a musical manner. So for instance, this short pattern that I just did, let's start there. If we look at it, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 notes. So if we think about landing on that as our downbeat, we have 6 notes. Well, it's perfect. We can do it as a group of 6 or 2 groups of 3, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. Or 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. However you want to count that. Notice I'm always on a down. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2. So I'm always going to have a musically relevant note group of notes that I'm aware of. Something like the longer pattern, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So if we think of that as our downbeat, that would give a group of 10. So maybe 2 groups of 5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. One, two, three, four, five, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. Once we have a musically relevant note grouping that we can practice our arpeggio pattern with, it's a good idea to get the metronome out, right? Once we've worked out all these elements, practiced getting just the sort of choppy rest strokes, getting that working and practicing our individual control of stopping on a string, and then we coordinate the 2 hands. Then we can move on to trying to build the speed of it once we know the grouping of notes that we want, right? And then we can use the metronome. Kind of like I used in episode 1 of the FAQ series, where I was learning a piece of music and I slowed it down and gradually brought that tempo back up to a place where it was getting closer to the original. We can do the same thing here with these, right? So whatever pattern we choose to use. So really, just to recap, you can start off by practicing just our right hand, practicing these little rest strokes, getting a good succession of them, stopping on individual strings to gain control. Right? Then when we have figured that out, then figure out our arpeggio pattern, but figure out a fingering that's going to allow us to get our fingers in motion so that they're not going to be, letting the notes ring together. That's not going to be a good sweep if all the notes are ringing together. They've got to be choppy. Remember to use both hands to mute, right? So as we're doing our downstroke sweeps, allow the heel of the side of your hand or the heel of your palm to go onto the string and mute it, the one that we've just hit, and let it sort of follow down so we don't get any unnecessary ringing notes. And then we can use the tips of our fingers and sort of this part of our finger to bar as we're coming back to mute the unwanted notes as well, right? We should be able to do it with high gain or low gain. Right? We should be relying on the gain to get it sounding good, right? We should be able to do it with the guitar or just, turned right down and just get it nice and clean, right? Make sure the groupings of notes are there and then use our metronome. So I hope I covered everything and I hope that all made sense. That's just kind of a few of the things that I could think of that I utilize all the time in my sweep picking once I started sort of analyzing what I do. It gets to the point once you get fairly proficient at it, you're really not thinking about it anymore. You're just playing it. And it's just another tool in your toolbox that we can kind of take out when we need it. And it just gives us another thing to help keep our soloing a little more interesting, possibly. Anyways, guys, I hope that helps some folks. Let me know in the comments what you thought and if that helps you. And I hope it does. And also let me know any other questions you guys might have that you want me to cover in further episodes of this series. This is fun. I enjoy doing it. And I will likely do this one as a premiere too. And if I do, I'll be sitting listening with you folks while I say the same thing. Anyways, thank you so much for tuning in, guys. I will be back with some more content very soon. I always appreciate the support and the kind words. Please like the video, share it if you don't mind, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I'll be back very soon. Ciao for now.